Welcome to the carving shop. I'm Joe Dillette. I would like to demonstrate carving a molding. A customer came to me with a molding. He's remodeling his house, restoring it. The house was built back right around 1900s, 1890s, something like that. And he had these moldings. They remodeled the house, they lowered the ceiling, and they cut the top of these moldings off. And they didn't lower the ceilings in the closet, so he got one out of the closet that shows the top of the molding. I think this one was put in the closet because the quality of this here is not the best. Let me do a close-up and show you the carving on here, if I can do it without it blurring too much. So you can see at the tips of these the breakout, and surprisingly, people think back into the 1800s, early 1900s, everything was done with all by hand. But this here was machine done. And let me show you how I could tell. I'm trying to adjust the light here so you're going to be able to see in the bottom of these, there's a little dot exactly in the center. It's like a router pin. And so every one of those has a dot right in the center where they sunk the router in. What we're doing is we're making a whole bunch of these moldings. The customer brought to me these pieces of pine. The original ones were a pine. So we're working in sugar pine. You can tell sugar pine by the short little grain pattern on the back. And it's the same profile. They added the center part, which was missing on this piece he gave me. So this is what I've got to work with, and all I have to do is add the carving. We call it a chase carving here at the top, and the bottom has got 5 flutes. And the challenge with this here is to get all the parts even, no breakout. The first thing that we do is you take the design and you draw a pattern. Now you can see the difference in this. This one is very wide, almost breaks out. This one here is not very wide. The points don't all drop down the same. So I make those corrections. Like these two are about breaking into one another, and then this one has got a big gap. These two are almost touching. So I try to correct all those. And so once I have the pattern drawn, I just kind of laid it on there. I said, well, we got 3 hearts. I folded in the center. That's where I started. And then I just located the other 2 points equally spaced, drew the hearts. Now the next thing I do is once I have the pattern on there, I take carbon paper. This is not the same as the grease type carbon paper. This is true carbon, like the carbon in a pencil. And the reason why we use true carbon paper is that the other paper is is greasy, and it stains the wood. It'll smear. It's like a crayon. It'll stain. So this is carbon paper. You can see I've used it already. I've got the design reproduced on the thing, so what I'm going to do is find another spot that isn't really used that much on the carbon, so I have enough carbon to transfer my pattern. So I then line it up. It's lined up so it sets down into the edge, and I will just trace the pattern. So I'll follow my pattern around, trying to stay on the lines. Pretty quick process. Just holding it in place by hand. If it moves, I know I can line it up because it's sitting right there and it goes from one side to the other. It's flush with the sides of the molding. And all this is just a guideline. Okay, so hopefully you can see the pattern on here. The next thing that I do is I take a V-tool, and this is a 45 degree. The angle is 45, included angle of the V-tool, and I will take and make my stop cuts right at the bottom of these lines. This other pattern, this one here, had all the breakouts on the bottom. That's because there wasn't any stop cuts. When this little router went around, got down here, and it just popped the piece off. So I will prevent that from happening by putting in the stop cut. I will put in all my stop cuts. That's just the way I like to work. It's more systematic. And then at the bottom. And I use a mallet. The mallet, I don't really need it for power because I can push this through, but I'd like to have it for control. So for control, I tap with the mallet, and it's just easier to follow the line then. So I'm just following my line. See how I used the stop cuts? That's right where that chip will come out. And it won't chip past that point. That one I didn't quite get exact, but it will come out. You can see this goes pretty quickly. This is called a chase cut. So you're just going and doing the one groove. That is all there's to the carving. See how I start at the top of the round? Work down both sides. If I started at the bottom here and worked up, I would be chipping. It would tear into the grain here at the top. So that's working with the grain, starting at the top and coming around the circle. You see how I don't follow my lines exact. They're more or less of a guideline. One of the nice things about carving something like this is they don't need to be precise. If you make everything very precise, it will look way too stiff. So you want to have it so it all looks even, looks balanced, looks symmetrical, but you want to have it so it's not exactly all the same, because then it will look like it's too mechanical. It loses its freedom. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do is here at the top of these circles, when we were coming around and I'm pounding with the chisels, So I'm coming around like this here. Every time I tap it with the mallet, it's making what I call a pound line. And to get rid of those, then I take the, especially in the tight radiuses, they get pretty noticeable. So I just take the chisel and I'm just following, doing a little cleanup, smoothing out those lines. There, that finishes up this side. Now to do the flutes on this other side, I don't have to draw the outline of the flute. So for my drawings, I just here show the width and I show the height. And I can just go and make little dots for my pattern. And that's easy enough to follow. So I will use my carbon paper again. I line it up into that area. I center it by going right close to the ends. And I just take and put dots, marking the width. I do one in the center and at the top of the flute so I know where to start the flute. The center just helps me to keep it straight coming down, eyeballing it. There. They're pretty hard to see, but I can see them. They don't have to be real dark, just as long as I can use them for a guideline. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the stop cuts. The stop cuts, I'm using a straight chisel, narrow one, and the first thing I do is I come down lightly on the two sides, marking the width, and because it is curved, the stop cut has to be deeper in the center. So after I mark the two ends shallow, I go to the deeper side in the center. And I will do that for all 5. And I rock the chisel back and forth a little bit. It just helps me get to depth. Now the chisel that I'm using to do the flutes, I picked one that exactly matches the radius. So it's pretty close in width and also in the same radius. So that's what I'm going to use. And I just take the mallet. I don't have to worry about it chipping out on the bottom because the stop cut stops it from doing that. So I go across it, do all 5. So now I will just clean them up. You see the pound marks that where every time I hit the chisel with the mallet. So now I'm going to smooth them out. So I'm getting close to the end of the job. I will show you the ones that I've got done here. Here's most of them. So I have, I think, 5 or 6 left to finish the order. So they're pretty easy to do. The customer is going to put on all the finish on it, the stain, and so all I have to do is the carving. So they get mounted on the top in this way. So this is pointing up, and they will get the finish on them, and they'll look pretty neat, I think. So thank you for watching.